How's it going, guys? Today we're back again with the next tier list video in our series here. This time we're going to go through the normal type Pokemon inside a Pokemon TCG Pocket. So we have three tiers. We have the solid tier, the mid tier, and the hard pass tier. And let's jump straight into it with the hard pass tier. The first card that's going to be going into here is the Porygon. Now, Porygon is a little bit unfortunate because I think it does have a cool ability in Data Scan. Once per during your turn, you can look at the top card of your deck. Now that is not too useful as of right now because there aren't a whole lot of ways to manipulate the top card of the deck or to, I guess, enable draw. Right now you have Professor's Research, lets you draw two cards. That is okay, but it's not enough to justify using it because basically the only situation that comes into here where this would be useful is, let's say you have two supporters in your hand. You have Professor's Research and then something else. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to use Professor's Research or not, or the other supporter card. So you can use Porygon, look at the top card of your deck, say, oh, this card is not worth drawing into. So you just choose to use the other supporter card instead. Or it's something that you really need, so you choose to then use Professor's Research based off the information you got from Porygon. Either way, it's not amazing, so that's why it's in the hard pass tier. Maybe it'll get better over time. I think it does have potential to get better. It just depends what other cards get released farther down the line. Next up, we have Chansey. Chansey is a bit of a bulky Pokemon with 120 as a basic. Has a attack for 60 damage for 3 energy, which is a bit rough for the amount of energy they put on there. And a retreat cost of 3, so it's going to be hard to get him out of the active. Overall, it's just not worth putting in the deck, and that's why it's in the hard pass. Next up, we have Dubwool. Now, Dubwool is a bit of a tanky guy. He's got 120 HP, 3 energy for 80, and it's on stage 1. So, overall, I think similar to Chansey, just a high energy cost to get the attack off, and you'd evolve into this one, so it's a little bit less consistent to get out. So, again, it's going to be in hard pass. Maybe it's a bit better, maybe it could be mid, but I'm going to put it in hard pass for now, at least. Next up is Tauros, a basic Pokemon, 100 HP, and does an attack for 50 that costs 2 colorless energy. I think that if this card had a supporter card that would allow it to do more damage similar to Magmar, I would bump it up. But because it's just a basic with just 50 for 2, I think that it's going to be in hard pass tier. It's not enough, and there are a couple better options, so it's not gonna get put into mid. Next up, we got Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff is a Stage 1 Pokemon, 100 HP, 2 energy for 60 damage. It does have an okay damage output, but I think it's, again, yeah, I think there are just better options even here in the basic, like, normal Pokemon category we have. So, I don't think it's worth putting in the deck, and that's why it's going to be in the hard pass tier. Next up, we have Raticate. Raticate is a Stage 1 Pokemon with 80 HP, not very high for a Stage 1. It has an attack for 40 damage that costs 1 colorless energy. Pretty easy attack to get off, but again, you'd hope for more out of a Stage 1 Pokemon, so that's why it's in the hard pass tier. And let's see, next up after that is Chinchino. So Chinchino is a Stage 1 Pokemon, 90 HP, not very high. And then an attack that does 30 damage for each of your bench Pokemon for 3 energy. Too high of an energy cost to get out consistently. I think that the HP is a little bit low, so you'll get KO'd a lot. Overall, I'm not too impressed, and that's why it's going to be in hard pass tier. Next up, we have Snorlax. Now, Snorlax could be very interesting if they ever release any switch cards, but as of right now, the only way to get out of the active is, well, either getting gusted by the opponent or retreating. And for that reason, 4 energy retreat cost is a massive liability, so you need to have a lot of good payoff and a lot of consistency to be able to justify being up there. And unfortunately for Snorlax, 4 energy for 70 is just not it. So for that reason, it's going to be in the hard pass. Next up we have, where is Lickitung? Lickitung is another interesting one. It has 3 energy, which does 60 damage for every single heads you get. But when you get tails, the count ends. So basically, you're risking a lot on some coin flips for a lot of energy and a very low amount of HP. Overall, I just don't think it's consistent enough to be put into the mid tier, and that's why it's gonna be in the hard pass tier. And then rounding us out of the hard pass tier is Ditto. Ditto is awful. I think it's probably the worst card in the game right now. I really don't like it. And it's let me give you a rundown as to why. It's one of the more interesting cards in the game, admittedly, but I just think it's not great. It's got 70 HP on a basic. That's all right, pretty decent HP for a basic Pokemon. One energy attack called Copy Anything. You choose one of your opponent's attacks, and it uses that attack. The caveat is that the Pokemon doesn't have the necessary energy to use the attack does nothing. So, if you're able to predict before the game starts somehow what your opponent's deck is, whatever deck they're playing, and if you have the correct energy in your deck to pull off those attacks, he can be useful. But the problem is you're basically leaving a lot up to chance. You need to have the correct energy to be able to pull off the attack, and most of the time you're not going to have that. So basically, you're putting a dead card in your deck that can't do anything, that has low HP, that can get knocked out pretty easily. Overall, it's just not the card you want to be putting in your deck, and for that reason, it is in the very, very bottom of hard pass tier, maybe even the worst card in the game as of right now. Moving on to the mid tiers, I'm going to lead this off with Dodrio. Dodrio does not on the surface look very impressive. It's got low HP for a stage 1. It's got a low damage output, but the one thing that's kicking it up to mid from hard pass is that free retreat. We've talked about before in a game where there are no switch cards. Free retreat is a very, very good option to have on any Pokemon if you can, and for that reason it's going to be bumped up to mid from hard pass. Next up we have Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan is another fun one. It's got a low investment cost, which I do like, but it is inconsistent with the coin flips. The way it works is that for one energy, you flip 2 coins, it does 30 damage for each heads. If this is your Pokemon you're starting the game with in the active, it's going to be pretty good. One energy cost is very easy to get onto it, and 2 coin flips, you can be averaging out 30 damage, which is passable for a regular attack off on the rip. And then sometimes you'll hit 60 and might even KO the opponent's active Pokemon if it has 60 or less HP. So, for that reason, I think it could be a very, very solid pick, just as maybe you probably want to run 2 copies in the deck if you do decide to play them. The one caveat I will say is that the 3 retreat cost is very much a liability, is that because eventually you'll have to get him out of the active. You're probably not going to want to be swinging with this guy for the whole game. So for that reason, it is not going to go to the solid tier. If they ever create a way to easily switch out your Pokemon, he can actually go up even higher. I might even put him into the solid tier. But until there is an easy way to get your Pokemon in and out of the active, he is going to be firmly in the mid tier. Next up, I'm going to put Wigglytuff EX here. So Wigglytuff EX is a stage 1 EX Pokemon, so it's going to cost you 2 prize points if he gets knocked out. And he has the attack Sleepy Song for 3 colorless energy. It does 80 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Now, we've talked about sleep before in other videos. Sleep is very good right now because there are no switch options. The problem here is you need to get 3 energy onto him, and again, the risk of having a 2 prizer. Overall, I think if you can get the energy onto him, he's probably pretty solid. I think 140 HP is serviceable, and for that reason, he's in the mid tier. Now, the next card I actually could not seem to get on here for some reason, so I'll just flash it up on screen. It will be in the mid tier. It is Fearow. Got 100 HP. It's got an attack called Drill Run for 50 and is a stage 1 Pokemon. Now, Drill Run has a secondary effect that you flip a coin. If heads, you discard a random energy for your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, this card's not necessarily super amazing, but I think it's strong enough to be put in the mid tier. 50 damage is not crazy, but it's serviceable, and being able to remove a random energy is alright with 50 damage output at least. We looked at Mawile in a previous video, which only had 20 and had the same effect on a basic, but for 50 damage, I think it becomes a slightly better attack, even if it's not consistent. But I'll keep it in the mid tier for now. Moving on to the high tiers, I'm going to lead this off with one of the ones that I think is really fun, Aerodactyl. So Aerodactyl is a fossil Pokemon that is a stage 1. It has an attack called Primal Wing Beat. It has, basically, you put 2 colors energy on this Pokemon, you flip a coin, if you get heads, you shuffle the opponent's active Pokemon into their deck. I think this is hilarious. I think this is a very funny card. So let's say, for example, the opponent has a Pokemon set up there with 4 energies in the active, 5 energies or something like that, it's a Blastoise. They spent the whole game charging it up, and it's fully evolved. You pull out this guy, and maybe you're playing a deck that you can't KO something with that much HP. You put maybe a 1/1 line of Aerodactyl, one of his fossils, one of him. And then you pop him on your bench, you evolve him up, you set him up, and then you bring him into the active, you bet it all on that coin flip, and then you put his fully charged up Pokemon back into the deck with all the energy put away. I think that has enough merit to be in the solid tier. It is not consistent. It is essentially a backup plan, but for some decks that don't have the massive damage output, I think that he could be an interesting option as a last resort if you need to KO something that's way out of your range. The 2 energy cost is not impossible to get on there, and for that reason, I think Aerodactyl is a fun card to consider. I think it'll be at the very bottom of solid tier, but I think it's an interesting one for sure. Next up after that, I'm going to put Persian. Now, Persian is cool. First of all, Meowth has a nice attack that allows you to draw 1 card, so if you play Persian, you're playing Meowth, so you get a little bit of an extra draw, which in this game is very, very helpful, because there's not a whole lot of draw. And then Persian is not bad itself, with a 2 energy attack for 40, which is a little bit low, but the secondary effect is what you're going for, which is, again, flip a coin, and discard a random card from your opponent's hand. Now, when a game where you have very small hands and very limited draw support, this card is very, very strong if you get the heads on the coin flip. Even if you get tails, you're still doing 40 damage for stage 1. Again, a little bit low, but it's not out of the range of it's not bad. It is solid enough to earn its place here, and I think that's why it's going to stay in solid tier for me. Next up, we have Farfetch'd. So Farfetch'd is a very simple Pokemon that does its job really well. 60 HP, 1 energy, Leak Slap for 40 damage. Now, a basic Pokemon be able to do 4 damage is pretty solid. Again, it's very similar to the Scythers that we looked at before, the different Pokemon on each type. And now Farfetch'd does it a little bit better because it does 40 instead of 30. It also has a 1 or 2 cost. The only thing that's a downside of Farfetch'd is the HP is a little bit lower. But I think overall, this it's pretty solid damage for a basic Pokemon. I believe it is the highest damage output that is consistent for a basic Pokemon that we've seen so far, and for that reason, it's going to be in solid tier. And the only thing going above that right now is Pidgeot. Pidgeot is a stage 2 Pokemon, so you're going to evolve into it. It has the ability Drive Off. Once during your turn, you may switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench, and the opponent gets to choose their next active Pokemon. So this is really cool. You can combine this with a lot of different stuff that we've seen in previous types. Like Dark, we had Arbok, which can lock them into the active. So you play this with Arbok, and then all of a sudden they're already mixed up. They can't retreat again because of the attack from Arbok. You can do a lot of damage with this card. It also has an attack, wing attack for 2 energy for 7 damage, which is not terrible. It's easy to charge up and have a secondary attacker on the bench with this guy. Overall, I think it's very strong utility, and if you don't have a full evolution line in your deck, I would consider it, because I think it could be worth it, and it could definitely win you some games. But that's the tier list for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you agree, please leave a like. If you disagree, leave a comment and tell me what I got wrong, and I can move some stuff around. If you have any interesting deck ideas, let me know also. Maybe I've undervalued some of these guys here. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Take it easy. Peace.